Friday the 13th, the untold horror story. It starts with silence, not the silence of peace, but the kind that hangs in the air just before something breaks. You're in the woods, dense, patient woods. You feel it in your chest before your mind catches up. That pressure, that heaviness. And then it comes, slowly at first, like it's watching you. Mist, rolling through the trees, thick and deliberate, not natural, not weather. It doesn't matter where you are. Ontario, New Jersey, northern Maine, somewhere near the Alps, different decades, same pattern. Friday the 13th, the mist comes at dusk, swallows the land by night, and when it lifts, someone is missing. Local legends say the mist doesn't drift. It selects. It's always cold. It always moves against the wind. And sometimes people hear it speak, not with words, but with memories. It shows you someone you lost, someone you regret, someone you buried. For some, that's enough to walk into it and never walk out again. In 1983, a police officer in Carbon County described it in a report later classified. The fog wasn't just thick, it pulsed. My flashlight didn't cut through it. It bounced back, like it didn't want me seeing what was behind it. His cruiser dash cam caught 20 seconds of something impossible, headlights illuminating a fully visible path, then nothing. Gone. No transition, no fade. Just black, like someone had erased the road itself. The report never made the news. The dash cam footage was marked corrupted. The officer retired within the year. But what he saw, or thinks he saw, matches nearly a dozen other statements from people across the country, all tied to one particular phenomenon. Disappearances on Friday the 13th, often near water, near woods, always wrapped in mist. In ancient Gaelic folklore, there is mention of Analayan Naskathana, the shadows that breathe. The texts describe a living fog that feeds on memory, stalks the guilty, and takes only those it's summoned. To be taken by it is to be judged. There is no court, no mercy, only erasure. The FBI has quietly logged over 300 missing persons cases since 1960, where mist was the last observed detail. In most of those, the victims were considered runaways, delinquents, lost hikers. In 5 of those, they were children in therapy camps, sent away to find structure and routine. All 5 cases were closed within a month. All 5 facilities were shut down. But there is one case that was never shut down. Not officially, because it was never acknowledged. A case where not 1 or 2, but 9 teenagers vanished. Same day, same camp, same hour. Witnesses described fog as crawling, breathing, alive. Only one adult remained, and even she claimed to have no memory of what happened in those 13 minutes. What's chilling isn't just the mist's presence. It's what always comes with it. Static on recordings, unreadable timestamps, time slowing, lights dimming, insects disappearing, dogs refusing to enter the tree line. One park ranger described the phenomenon in his notebook. It wasn't fog. It was like the forest was sweating something dark. He went missing 1 month later. Only his journal was found. We often associate Friday the 13th with cliché horror, slasher tropes, cheap screams, hockey masks, but that's the surface. That's the story we were given, manufactured, sold, recycled. The real story hides in patterns, in whispers, in redacted files and testimonies from people who were never interviewed again. Because if you pull the thread far enough, Friday the 13th stops being a joke. It becomes a map. And that map always begins with the same sign, mist. The locals called it Red Earth long before it became a camp, not because of the color of the soil, which was more ash than clay, but because of what happened during the mining years. Blood was spilled here, accidents, collapses, workers buried alive. The company was sued and vanished. The land was bought cheap, quietly, and decades later, it became a state-run rehabilitation experiment for juvenile offenders. No signs, no brochures, just a bus that arrived, dropped them off, and drove away. In July of 1983, 9 teenagers, all between 14 and 17, were sent to Red Earth. Each had a sealed file. No one knew why they were selected. Theft, violence, some psychiatric instability. Most had no family contact. They were told this was a chance to reset. A second shot, out in nature, with counselors and group work and trust exercises. What they weren't told was that the camp had no phone line, no radio, no working generator, only a propane stove and cold water from a nearby stream. They were isolated. It was run by 3 adults. A part-time counselor with a past no one could verify, a cook with hearing loss, and a psychologist on contract from a private institution. But when search teams arrived weeks later, only 1 adult remained, and she wouldn't speak. The others were never found. In its design, the camp was rudimentary. 5 cabins, 1 mess hall, a tool shed, no perimeter fence. The buildings were made of salvaged timber, and most had no locks. The trees surrounded everything, tight, watchful. The teens joked about them at first, calling them the jury. But they stopped joking around day 3 when the first incident happened. They'd gone hiking as part of a trust exercise. The counselor leading the group insisted they stay in a line. One kid, Eric M., wandered off for just a moment. He wasn't heard from again until morning, when he was found standing at the edge of the woods, barefoot, clothes soaked, staring blankly at the empty fire pit. He couldn't speak. He couldn't move. The cook wrapped him in blankets. The psychologist wrote it off as a stress reaction. But what disturbed the others wasn't just Eric's condition. It was what he was holding. A single, white shoelace tied in an elaborate knot, soaked in what looked like rust. It wasn't his. Over the next 3 nights, animals stopped approaching the camp. The stream dried for 2 full days, despite upstream flow. The fog returned, not as a drift, but as a pulse, appearing for minutes, vanishing, then returning from another direction. One of the teens, Sarah P., wrote in her journal, "It feels like the trees are breathing. Every time I blink, something moves in the mist." That journal was recovered later, inside a locked footlocker no one had the key for. The camp cook attempted to leave the grounds on foot after hearing voices at night. He was found 11 miles away, dehydrated, unable to explain why his hearing aid had been crushed in his own mouth. His tongue was intact. The official story: sudden group psychosis. No foul play, no charges. The psychologist was placed on administrative leave, then quietly disappeared from state employment records. The camp was bulldozed in October. But no one talks about the red marks found on the floorboards of Cabin 3. Symbols not part of any known alphabet. Not paint, not blood. Something crystalline. Etched in patterns that resembled topography or sound waves. Patterns that, when analyzed by an audio technician years later, matched the spectrogram of a child whispering the same phrase on loop: "Follow the knot." They never found the other 8 kids. They never found the counselor. They never opened an investigation. Because no one wanted to admit the camp wasn't haunted by a ghost. It had been designed to feed something. Her name was Dr. Helen Rourke, age 38, hired through a third-party mental health agency contracted by the Department of Youth Corrections. No published papers. No institutional affiliation. Her credentials were valid but shallow. Barely more than a postgrad with some volunteer field work. She wasn't known by colleagues. She didn't appear in any medical directories. But she was sent to Red Earth with full authority to administer psychological assessments, group therapy, and, curiously, visual documentation. The VHS camera she brought was old even for 1983 standards. Shoulder-mounted, commercial grade. Its battery required constant replacement. Yet she insisted on recording everything. Interviews, trust walks, meals, silence. When asked why, her reply was cold. Some things don't speak unless watched. Her personal notes were never recovered. The leather-bound journal she was seen writing in nightly was gone by the time investigators arrived. The contents of her field desk had been burned in a pit near the stream, along with several blank videotapes, tent poles, and a single hiking boot split cleanly in half. But one tape survived. It was found inside a waterproof duffel bag buried beneath the psychologist's cabin. The zipper had been glued shut. The magnetic tape had signs of heat exposure, bubbling, warping. but still played. Not clearly, not linearly. The footage was distorted, fragmented. The first 10 minutes showed cabin interiors, kids sleeping, wind howling. The camera lens trembles slightly, as if held by someone breathing heavily. Then, a shot of the woods. No narration, just trees, fog. The camera slowly tilts, revealing a shape in the mist, humanoid, motionless, nearly blending into the bark. The video cuts. Next fragment, the psychologist herself, speaking directly to the lens. She's pale, eyes red from crying. Her voice shakes, but her words are calculated. They're not seeing the same things. The mist chooses. It doesn't just take, it teaches. She goes silent. Behind her, through the cabin's open window, something flickers, fast and low, like movement skimming across the floor. She doesn't react. The image distorts again, then black, then static, then a final image. The camera lies on the ground, lens tilted upward. It captures the edge of a boot, a pale hand hanging limp, and in the reflection of the cabin window, someone watching from the tree line. Tall, still, no face, just an outline. The final timestamp on the footage reads 19 hours, 13 minutes, and 13 seconds. Exactly the moment recorded in multiple police reports when all clocks in the camp stopped. Dr. Rourke's body was never found. Her disappearance was ruled presumed deceased under unknown conditions. Her hiring record was scrubbed. When investigators attempted to contact the agency that employed her, the number was no longer in service. Years later, a former archivist for the Department of Juvenile Affairs admitted under anonymity that her personnel file included a hand-drawn map, matching the patterns found in the etched cabin floorboards, and a photocopy of a single word written in charcoal: not. In the years that followed, multiple attempts were made to trace the origin of the VHS camera she brought. Serial number: unlisted. Manufacturer: defunct. Internal mechanics: modified with unknown components, including a small copper coil and a fragment of bone. Human, adult, female. Experts in analog media restoration claim the tape behaves differently than standard VHS. Audio segments reverse randomly, video stretches and compresses. But one phrase appears in 3 different timestamps, whispered in different voices. She knew we were watching. It was the furthest structure from the mess hall, half covered by vegetation, warped by humidity, its roof bowed under the weight of years. They called it the signature cabin because of a tradition established by the camp's first warden. Every teen who arrived was to write their name inside a ledger kept on a wooden altar near the center of the room. Not a symbolic gesture, mandatory. The ledger was a thick, leather-bound book with yellowed pages and frayed edges. No lines, just space for a name, a date, and a single sentence. "Leave what brought you here," it read at the top of every page. Most wrote lies, nicknames, slurs, confessions meant to shock. But some took it seriously, wrote things no one expected. "I saw my brother burn. He told me to bring the bones." She whispers through trees. At first, counselors assumed the creepier entries were jokes, attention-seeking. But that changed on the 7th day, when one of the names, Sam W., appeared again 5 pages later, written in a hand completely unlike the first. And this time, beneath the name, the sentence had changed. "She doesn't like liars." What followed was escalation. Pages rewritten, ink running upward, sentences appearing in languages no one recognized. Cyrillic, Greek, Latin, but not quite. Symbols within symbols. One of the teens, fluent in Hebrew, tried to translate a phrase that resembled the tetragrammaton. What he managed to extract made him vomit. "I am the signature. You are the pen." Days later, that teen walked into the woods and was never seen again. The psychologist, Rourke, had reportedly warned staff not to let anyone sign the ledger alone. She believed proximity mattered. that the act of writing in that book wasn't passive, it was participation. The cook overheard her refer to the cabin as a breathing archive. When asked what she meant, she refused to answer. The most disturbing discovery came when investigators finally opened the cabinet beneath the altar. Inside were stacks of old pages, hundreds of them, dating back to the 1940s. They weren't organized chronologically. Some appeared brand new. Others were partially burned, fused together with a black resin that forensic teams couldn't identify. And in the center, a single sheet that seemed freshly placed. Blank. Except for a symbol etched into the surface, not written but carved with pressure. A knotted shape, tightly wound, surrounded by 13 intersecting rings. It resembled no known religious icon, but closely mirrored a diagram found in a medieval grimoire known as Liber Tenebris, a book condemned by the Vatican for encouraging self-erasure in service of silence. But even more unsettling was the fact that the cabin wasn't listed on the original blueprint. That when compared to aerial photographs taken just 2 years before the camp was built, the area where the cabin now stands was empty. No construction permits, no foundation registry. Satellite overlays show no visible disturbance to the tree line around it, almost as if the building didn't exist until someone signed the book. Camp staff never spoke of it again. The structure was removed quietly. Bulldozers refused to work near it. 2 machines broke down simultaneously when parked within its radius. Eventually, it was torched. But months later, during a fire management sweep of the area, a ranger found a small wooden box lodged inside the hollow of a scorched tree. Inside was a single torn page. The page contained one name, Sam W., written in both block letters and cursive by 2 different hands. The mess hall was the only place in Red Earth that ever felt remotely human. It smelled like gas and damp wood. The floor creaked, the benches wobbled, but it was warm and it had windows, 2 things the rest of the camp seemed to lack. Every night, at precisely 18:30, the cook prepared the meal. Stew, mostly. Bread when he could. Some powdered milk that turned gray when stirred too long. Friday, July 13th, 1983. The cook began dinner as usual. Witnesses say he whistled while chopping onions. Nothing unusual, nothing off. Around 1850, he stepped outside to retrieve water. The pot was already boiling. The table had been set, 9 plates, 9 glasses, all aligned with unnatural precision. Someone had straightened them with the kind of care you'd reserve for a final meal. When he returned, the camp was silent. Too silent. He called for Rourke, for the teens, for anyone, nothing, not even insects. The air had changed, thickened. He walked to the mess hall, doors still open, and froze. The plates were full. Each one had been served, stew still steaming, bread still warm, but no one had entered the building. No sound of footsteps, no movement, no shadows through the windows. Just food, fresh and untouched. The only clue? A single napkin, folded neatly in the center of the table. Inside it, a sliver of what appeared to be bark, carved with a symbol identical to the knot from the cabin. But this one had something else. A name, burned in shallow lines. It wasn't any of the campers. It was the cook's. He vomited on the floor and ran. According to his statement, taken later under sedation, he blacked out somewhere along the trail, woke up with his lips bloody and his hands raw. He'd chewed his hearing aid into shards. When asked why, he whispered something the interviewer never forgot. She told me to silence what listens. Back at camp, Rourke was gone. The teens were gone. The tool shed had been ripped open from the inside. One of the beds in cabin 3 was soaked in a black tar-like substance that stained the walls in a spiral pattern. But the clocks, every clock in the camp, had stopped. All of them. Same time. 19 hours and 13 minutes. Forensics would later confirm that the food remained warm for over 3 hours. Unusual, physically improbable. Even the stew's consistency hadn't changed. No separation, no skin on top. Almost as if the meal had been preserved mid-process. One investigator, while documenting the scene, attempted to lift a fork from one of the plates. He recoiled. The metal was cold, not room temperature, refrigerated cold. He dropped it, and it shattered. A steel fork. Shattered. No report could explain it. The food samples decayed normally once removed from the site, but every photograph of the table taken before the removal showed the same anomaly. In each image, the chairs appear altered, closer to the table than they should be, their shadows longer, skewed. One image, when analyzed digitally, showed a faint imprint on the glass of a cup, an elongated fingerprint, too thin to be human. The napkin with the bark was confiscated. It was last catalogued in a private evidence locker marked Class 4, Unexplained Ritual Artifacts. When a researcher tried to trace its location years later, the file was gone. But a photograph remains. In the image, the bark fragment is shown resting atop the napkin. If enhanced, zoomed to 300% and adjusted for contrast, the carving becomes clear. Not just a name, a date. 7 years in the future. The day the cook died. Alone, in a nursing home. Dinner untouched, plate perfectly arranged. Fork missing. The cassette was found inside a metal thermos buried beneath 6 inches of compacted earth behind the cabin Rourke once occupied. It wasn't labeled, no case. Just the tape, oxidized at the edges. Its magnetic film wound tightly and unevenly. It was recovered during a second sweep of the area by a private team hired by a surviving relative of one of the campers. Official authorities had long abandoned the site, declaring it unsuitable for further excavation due to structural and ecological instability. But instability wasn't what this team feared. It was preservation. They wanted truth before erosion took it. The audio was nearly indecipherable at first. Static bursts, mechanical grinding, occasional clicks, like a recorder being turned on and off mid-sentence. But when a sound engineer reversed the file, flipping the entire track backward, the shape of something began to emerge. Children. Not laughing, not speaking, crying. At first, it scattered, short sobs, like hiccups in the dark. Then, a slow, escalating wave of weeping, almost rhythmic, forming a pulse underneath the static. The cries rise in pitch, then collapse into silence, and then, a voice. Whispered, fractured, male, but impossibly deep. The kind of voice that scrapes the inside of your ribs instead of entering your ears. It speaks a name. Not one of the campers. Not the psychologist. But a name that, when run through the database of religious texts and demonological registries, appears in a singular, obscure context. Rimuel, a name listed once in a 1913 Vatican investigation into possession during an unsanctioned exorcism near the French Pyrenees. Rimuel, translated loosely from pre-Christian dialects, means the one who returns what was taken. The tape's voice repeats the name 13 times, each time slower. Each time with more distortion, as if the recorder itself were warping under the weight of the sound. Between the invocations, you can hear movement, bare feet on damp ground, the sharp breath of someone panicked but trying to remain silent. Once, a single whisper cuts through, "She's here now." But investigators brought the tape to multiple forensic labs. None could explain the pattern of electromagnetic interference that appeared in the waveform. It resembled brainwave activity, specifically theta waves associated with deep trauma, REM sleep, or hypnotic states. But more disturbing was the hidden layer. When subjected to spectrographic analysis, the audio revealed an image, a visual pattern encoded within the frequency spectrum, an ancient technique used by occultists in the 16th century, known as cantus obscura, where sound becomes sigil. The image, a knot, wound tight, ringed by weeping eyes. The engineer who discovered this suffered a seizure 23 minutes after decoding. He survived but woke blind in his right eye. His final words before collapsing were, "It's not recorded, it's remembering." To this day, the tape is classified as a Class 5 anomalous item and stored in a soundproof chamber within a private archive known only as the Veritas Vault. Access requires a biometric scan and a non-disclosure agreement involving 3 separate international entities. But some say copies exist. Cracked versions. Rips pass through forums, deep web circles, traded like cursed currency. And once, a short loop surfaced on a paranormal message board before being deleted. Users who listened described strange effects: clocks freezing, blood from the ears, screens flickering. But most reported something else, the feeling that they weren't just hearing the tape. They were being heard. It wasn't part of the original camp layout. It wasn't listed in the blueprints or marked by any trail sign. No staff member remembered digging it, and no camper admitted to touching a shovel. But one morning, it was there. A circular depression in the earth, about 6 feet across, no more than 2 feet deep. Uneven, raw. It looked like an unfinished fire pit, but there were no stones, no scorch marks, no ash, just dirt. Dirt that smelled wrong. Eric M., one of the campers who had briefly disappeared into the woods days earlier, was found kneeling beside the pit that morning. His fingers were bleeding, his nails cracked and torn. He had been digging, no tools, just his hands. When the cook tried to approach, Eric screamed, not words, a sound no one expected from a 15-year-old boy, a low guttural roar, feral and ancient. It shook the pine needles from the trees. The counselor pulled him back, but Eric didn't resist. He collapsed, convulsing, whispering something again and again between clenched teeth. "She's down there. Let her out." Later that day, the pit was roped off. Rourke insisted no one go near it. She took soil samples, photographed the hole, but none of the pictures came out. Each roll of film returned blank, fogged with a milky residue as if the lens had been pointed into a void. Then the second pit appeared, 10 feet to the left. Smaller, shallower, but this time something was inside. A piece of cloth. Red, frayed at the edges, folded unnaturally tight. When unfolded, it revealed something worse than blood. Symbols, burned into the fabric, matching those found on the walls of the signature cabin. That night, a storm rolled in. Lightning struck a tree just beside the pit, splitting it down the middle. And from the crack in the trunk, insects poured out, dozens of them, all dead, all identical. Tiny, eyeless, segmented things with hard shells. Entomologists later failed to identify them. Their DNA was partially degraded, as if they had been fossilized and then revived. The next day, a third pit. This time with bones. Not buried, arranged. Bird skulls. A raccoon's paw. Something that might have been a deer jaw, if deer had serrated teeth. The camp was unraveling. And then came the fourth pit. Shallowest of all. Only one thing inside. A human tooth. Molar. No root. Perfectly clean. But it wasn't just the pits themselves. It was the direction, the spacing. Each one pointed in alignment, north, east, south, west. A circle forming slowly, ritualistic, intentional. They weren't fire pits. They were gates. Rourke wrote a single line in her remaining journal pages before vanishing. The earth is thinning. That phrase appears later in multiple occult texts, often associated with liminality, a state of transition between the real and the unreal, the physical and the spiritual, the living and the other. When surveyors returned years later, no pits were found, no depressions. The earth had closed itself, healed. But ground-penetrating radar told another story. Beneath the surface, at exactly 2 feet, 11 inches depth, were irregular cavities. Not geological, not animal-made, and in one of those voids, a solid shape. Metallic, not shaped. Still warm. She was found on the shoulder of Route 19, just outside the Pine Hollow Junction, early morning, April 3rd, 1991. No ID, no bag, no shoes. She wore a ripped hospital gown smeared with ash and what appeared to be pine resin. Her feet were raw, skin torn and bruised from walking miles over gravel. Her hair was tangled with burrs. Her lips were split, but her eyes were fixed forward, like someone staring at a screen no one else could see. She was silent, completely. Not mute, not resistant, just unreachable. When officers tried to speak, she didn't flinch, didn't blink. When the ambulance lights reflected in her pupils, she didn't look away. She was catalogued as Jane Doe, number 9313, and taken to the Ashridge Psychiatric Facility. For weeks, she remained unresponsive, catatonic. Every medical test came back clean, no trauma, no drugs, no brain injury. But then came the tattoo. Nurses discovered it while changing her gown. A symbol across her upper spine. Faded, scabbed, raised like a brand. A knot, encircled. The same design etched into the bark found at Red Earth. The same as the floorboards in Cabin 3. And something else, beneath the knot, in barely legible cursive. I kept her secret. Officials began to investigate. Cross-referencing missing persons reports from the 80s revealed something chilling. The survivor matched the physical description of a girl named Melissa H., one of the original 9 teens sent to Red Earth in 1983. She had been listed as presumed deceased. DNA confirmed it. Melissa had returned. 8 years later. Not aged a day. Her fingerprints matched, dental records matched, but photos taken in 1991 showed no wrinkles, no signs of aging. Her voice never came back. Her memory, according to psychiatrists, was either deeply repressed or overwritten. But then came the drawings. She was given colored pencils during occupational therapy. At first, scribbles, circles, knots. But within a week, the images changed. Cabins, trees with mouths, ropes twisted around shadows. And then, faces. Not hers. Not the other teens. Watchers. Thin figures with eyeless faces and elongated hands, standing at the edge of windows. She drew them repeatedly, sometimes 12 to a page, sometimes 13. The psychologist assigned to her treatment began charting the drawings. He noticed they always came in cycles. Every 13 days, a new sequence. First, fog. Then, forest. Then, faces. Then, nothing. Melissa's heart would spike on the 13th night of each cycle. One time, she was found curled into a fetal position, whispering into the mattress. She still walks inside the tape. One day, without explanation, she stood, walked to the recreation room, turned on the television, an old unit that hadn't worked in years. Static filled the screen. She stared, smiled, then fainted. After that, the drawing stopped. She became more alert but less connected, not catatonic, just distant, and her eyes would follow things no one else could see. She died in her sleep 6 months later. Autopsy was inconclusive. But one nurse noticed something before the coroner arrived. Her fingernails, each one had a single letter carved underneath. Together, they spelled K-N-O-T-H-E-R-E. It started with static. Not the kind you hear on a deadline, not the gentle hiss of empty air. This static had depth, layers, movement. Breathing underneath the noise, like someone whispering behind fabric, just out of reach. The first report came from a mother in Traverse County. She lost her son to the red earth disappearances. Every year on Friday the 13th, she received a phone call at exactly 7:13 p.m. No ringtone, no vibration. Her phone would light up once, then go dark, and the call log would remain empty. But she heard it anyway. The sound, and beneath it, a whisper. Faint, coarse, familiar. You saw me once. At first, she thought it was her grief. Then she recorded it. Played it for her brother, who confirmed the voice sounded like her son, but older, slower, broken somehow. Over time, more families came forward, all connected to red earth, all reporting the same phenomenon. Calls with no number, static, a voice just beneath it, sometimes repeating names, sometimes just breathing, but always the same pattern, the same time, 7:13 p.m. Each one occurred on the 13th, not always Friday, but always the 13th. Engineers tried to trace the signal. It wasn't from a known source. No tower ping, no area code. In some cases, the phones weren't even active. Landlines without service, batteries long dead. Still, the call came, and there was one more detail. The whispers, when analyzed via spectrogram, revealed patterns, not audio waves, not random distortion, images. Shapes that looked like sigils, circles wrapped in broken rings, lines twisting in mathematical impossibilities. And always, the knot. One technician quit mid-analysis. He claimed the pattern looked back, that the image pulsed slightly on his monitor, as if alive. His hands trembled when he described hearing his own name whispered in reverse, though the tape never recorded it. A former agent with the Office of Paranormal Surveillance, OPS, who reviewed the case in 1998, noted something even more terrifying. The pattern of the calls wasn't random. Each occurred precisely 13 years after a pit had formed at Red Earth. And each whisper ended with the same phrase, spoken differently each time, but unmistakable. You heard because you were ready to hear. That line, or a version of it, had appeared before. In works journals. The bark inside the napkin. In the tattoo found on Melissa's back. Even etched beneath the mess hall table in letters so faint they were initially missed. But the calls weren't just haunting the families anymore. Strangers began reporting them. People with no known connection to the case. A college student in Montana, a truck driver in Manitoba, a nurse in Lisbon. When cross-referenced, they shared only one thing. All had interacted at some point in their lives with archival footage or written documentation related to Red Earth. A page, a newspaper clipping, a video. As if exposure was enough. As if knowing invited listening. And listening invited return. To this day, the calls haven't stopped. Even as the land around Red Earth grows silent, even as records are lost, tapes erased, articles pulled offline, the sound finds its way. Through wires, through walls, through memory. And each time it returns, the voice gets closer. No, Alan Mercer wasn't interested in folklore. He was a man of bones and layers, carbon dating, clay shards, stratification. He called ghost stories regional anesthesia, numb myths to make people feel better about unexplained pain. In 2007, he took on the Red Earth File as part of a speaking tour through the northern counties. His aim was to publicly dismantle the rumors surrounding the land, specifically those tying it to supernatural events. He mocked it on air, said the pit formations were nothing more than frost boils and lazy paranoia, said the knot symbol was a misinterpreted Celtic variant, said the missing campers had likely fled, if they ever existed. What Mercer didn't know was that one of his grad students had submitted a Freedom of Information request for the original soil samples. They came back contaminated. With human plasma. Mercer didn't flinch. He called it procedural error. Still, something changed. He stopped answering calls late at night, started locking his lab, refused to let students access a locked black box in the corner of his office, labeled K13, and then he vanished. On August 13th, 2007, a Friday, his last known location was at the border of the Red Earth perimeter. A photo, time-stamped by a wildlife camera, shows Mercer entering the woods alone, holding a map and a compact video camera. He's smiling, confident. 13 minutes later, the same camera captures a second image. A figure. Not Mercer. Taller, thinner, standing exactly where he'd walked in. No visible face. No reflection, and the trees around it seemed to bend, subtly, like they're leaning inward. Mercer's team waited 2 days before alerting officials. When search parties arrived, all they found was the camera. Its battery was dead, but the internal card was intact. The footage showed Mercer walking through the trees, narrating, mocking. This is where they say the pit was. It's just depression in the land, like all the others. He stops, turns, whispers. Was that a voice? He steps off camera. There's a soft thump. Then silence. But the camera keeps recording. For exactly 13 minutes and 13 seconds. Until it cuts to black. When played in reverse, just like the audio tape found years earlier, the last 30 seconds of the footage show a pale shape entering the frame. Crawling, inhuman. The pixels strain to render it, but behind the distortion, something is visible. A hand, long, wrapped in cloth, dragging something behind it. The analysis team attempted to stabilize the image. What they found embedded in the final frame, buried in the color channels, was a text string, burned into the video like a watermark. He came believing. That's what opened it. Mercer was never found. His lab was cleared. The box labeled K13 had been opened. Here, inside, only one item remained. Here, a page from a 1940s field manual on containment protocols for anomalous zones, hand annotated, highlighted, circled in red. Do not enter on the 13th. The bone was unearthed during a state-sponsored erosion control project in late 2019, almost 13 kilometers southeast of where red earth once stood. A sinkhole had collapsed a stretch of access road, exposing several layers of disturbed soil. Inside it, resting alone in a natural pocket of clay, was a femur, human, adult. The surface was unnaturally clean, no signs of decay, no trauma, except for the marks. Along the midshaft were carvings, etched, not scratched, deep and deliberate, uniform, like something had taken time to write with precision. Pathologists initially assumed post-mortem vandalism, but further examination proved otherwise. The carvings were made before the bone had fossilized, before the tissue had decayed. They were made while the owner was still alive. And they weren't random. Across the length of the femur, like a story wrapped in spiral, was a map. Not a geographic map, no latitude or recognizable terrain, but a symbolic path, sigils, angles, pathways intersecting in odd proportions. When superimposed over the topographical layout of the red earth site, the markings aligned perfectly with the pit locations. But there was more. Beneath the spiral, in a straight horizontal line, was a sentence. A warning, a confession, a riddle. The film was the distraction. She was the real. Our investigators struggled to interpret the phrase. Some believed it referenced the VHS tape recovered from Rourke's duffel. Others thought it pointed toward a larger metaphor, that all the footage, all the photographs, all the audio, they weren't capturing something. They were feeding it. The femur's marrow was also tested. It wasn't empty. Inside the sealed bone cavity, researchers found traces of a crystalline residue, sharp and iridescent, unlike any known mineral. Under microscopic analysis, the structures resembled data clusters, like synthetic memory cells embedded in organic matter. Memory, stored in bone. One forensic linguist, after months of studying the sentence, noticed something even more chilling. If you take the letters of the phrase and rearrange them, remove repeating symbols, and apply the number sequence 131313, you get a secondary message, a name, Remuel, followed by, not buried, bound. And the implications rattled the entire research team. The bone wasn't just a remnant. It was a container, a vessel made to carry something through time, and it hadn't been placed randomly. The location of its discovery formed the final point of the knot, the outer loop of the pattern etched into maps, seen in symbols, whispered in recordings. The knot was never just an image. It was an instruction, a construction. The pits were anchors. The tape, a key. And this bone? The last lock. Following protocol, the item was sealed, cataloged, and transferred to a private vault under the National Archives' Restricted Mythological Artifacts Division. But a month later, the vault reported a breach. No signs of forced entry, no missing personnel. Only the femur was gone. And in its place, a reel of film. 8mm. No label. No canister. Just a single message scrawled in permanent ink on the leader tape. She's ready to be seen. It began with a video, not a VHS, not film, digital, a YouTube upload with zero metadata, no title, no description, no comments, just one view count, 13. The thumbnail was a black square, but when brightened, the faint outline of a face emerged, blurred, tilted, partially obstructed by static. The left eye was missing, the right eye wide open. For the first 13 seconds, the video displayed nothing but noise, a low hum, barely perceptible, just enough to irritate. Then, a single frame, a cabin. Not a set, not archival footage, real, and recent. The timestamp showed a date 2 weeks before the upload, Friday the 13th. The location matched Red Earth's GPS coordinates, though the camp no longer existed, or so everyone believed. In the video, someone is holding a camera, handheld, breathing heavy. They're walking slowly, through undergrowth, through mist. Then they stop. The camera tilts toward a clearing. Figure stands there. Not moving, not blinking, wearing something that looks like a repurposed uniform. Old, soaked, torn. You can't see the face clearly, but you don't need to. It's looking back. Straight into the lens. And the lens flinches. Jitters. As if the camera itself is afraid. However, the footage cuts abruptly to black. No outro, no glitches, just silence. When the clip was downloaded and examined frame by frame, researchers noticed a pattern hidden in the shadows, barely a flicker but repeating across multiple sequences. A reflection from the eye. It wasn't just a person being filmed. It was someone filming back. Not metaphorically, literally. The eye in the reflection contained its own lens, its own flicker of red light. A recording within a recording. And the timestamp on the reflected lens, July 13th, 1983, 7:13 p.m. Same time, same date, the moment every clock stopped. The implication was clear. Whoever was watching had never stopped recording. Had never stopped watching. The footage was removed from the platform in under 13 minutes. Those who managed to download it before the takedown reported strange side effects. Static in headphones when no audio played. Phantom notifications from non-existent apps. Faces appearing in the background of video calls. Always out of focus. Always missing one eye. And in some cases, viewers began to dream. Always the same dream. A knot. Tight. Rotating slowly, like a noose suspended in water. Around it, 13 pairs of eyes. Only one of them broken. Rourke's files referenced the broken gaze multiple times. She believed it wasn't the entity that hunted the teens. It was the eye, the awareness, the lens that chose. And now that lens was no longer confined to analog. No, it had adapted. It had followed. And it had found us. And the final scene in the recovered clip showed something no one could explain. A camera on a tripod, old, 1980s model, sitting in the center of a dark room, lights off, door ajar, a single piece of tape hanging from the ceiling, twisting slowly in the stale air. Written on it, barely legible. You are watching the story. She is watching you. Then, silence. Not just in the room. In the viewer. Because if you made it this far, you've heard her name. You've followed the knot. And that means one thing. You're ready.